106.5. It's time now for Front Page Jacksonville, a show that delves into the issues that affect you. We believe in transparency and providing only the facts. And now, here's Octavius Davis.
We're back in the building on a Sunday morning right here on Hot 106.5, the soul of Duval. I'm your host here on Front Page Jacksonville, Octavius, the $1 million biggity voice. Thank you for tuning in with me once again. I know it's early. You may have had a long week. You may have had a short weekend, however you want to put it. But I'm simply grateful that you decided to tune in once again to Front Page Jacksonville so that we can dive into some of the things that are going on around Jacksonville. And when I tell you there are things going on around Jacksonville, we'll have an opportunity to dive into what some of those things are in just a few moments. Plus, we have two guests that will be joining us on the show today. I'll have an opportunity to share with you a little bit more down the road with who those individuals are going to be. But before we get into any of that, I trust the week has been enjoyable for you. I want to share that a few weeks back, I had on the show a guest by the name of Troy McNair. Troy McNair, he is one of the co-founders of Think Bold Festival and Conference, which just wrapped up yesterday in downtown Jacksonville. When Troy was on the show, he was sharing with us about what the Think Bold Conference is all about. I believe this was their third year doing the third Think Bold Conference. And he's like, hey, Octavius, man, you got to come out. You got to check it out. It's all about innovation, getting people connected, networking, bridging the gap, et cetera, et cetera. So I went. And I got to tell you, I'm glad that I did. So I want to give a shout out to not only Troy McNair, but also Maurice Mo Henderson, who's the other co-founder of the Think Bold Festival and Conference. It was nice. I'm telling you now, it was nice. If you are a business owner, if you have an innovative idea, Think Bold Festival needs to be on your radar. Now, thankfully, it's been here in Jacksonville for the past 3 years. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it will remain in Jacksonville for the years to come. But it was really nice. So to give a quick recap, now, I did not attend all of the seminars. I did not attend all of the events that are associated with the Think Bold Conference. A little caveat about me. If I haven't mentioned it already, I am a very introverted person. If I do not have to be out at public events, you will not see me out at public events. I am like a Sasquatch when it comes to those things. If you see me out and about, that is an anomaly. That thing had to have been very compelling to draw me out to be somewhere. I'm just not that type of person if I don't have to be. Now, though I'm very introverted, I have an extreme extroverted side. Case in point, what allows me to be able to do this radio show and interact with you the way that I do. When I'm emceeing events and I'm on stage in front of thousands of people and I'm able to keep them engaged. All of those sorts of things. Well, there's a switch that I have to flip to allow me to do that. But trust and believe, when that moment is over, I am heading to the hills back to solitude. And more often than not, my people battery is drained, depleted. Here's another fun fact for you. Once I leave this show on Sunday mornings, I am exhausted. There have been times where I've literally have had to catch myself because I fall asleep. I have an issue with falling asleep behind the wheel when I'm driving once I get too exhausted. That's just how much energy I put out. And that requires me to have to summon to do public type things. So even though it's just me and Jack in the studio this morning, I feel you on the other side of the microphone pulling me, drawing energy from me. I can feel it. And once I leave here, I'm tapped out. I got to go back to the Bat Cave and recharge. But the Think Bold Festival, man, I had an opportunity to attend a mixer on Friday night. Great mixer. For any of you that are gospel music fans, Demita Hatton, the former wife of gospel artist Dietrich Hatton, did you know she lives in Jacksonville? She is since remarried. She now lives in Jacksonville. She was there, had an opportunity to chop it up with her. Very down to earth. I'm going to actually get her in on the show here in the near future. but great opportunity to just kind of vibe out with other business owners, other innovative thinkers. Shout out to each and every one of the local businesses that catered the Think Bold. Y'all is some cooking folk here in Jacksonville. I mean, some good eats. I saw representatives from the Soul Food Bistro there. I saw other representatives from locally, independently owned businesses there. Now, I got to say this, though. Why must there be so much seafood? I have seafood allergies, shellfish specifically. So I can eat fish, tilapia, salmon, those are really the only two, my only two fish of choice that I eat. But I have to turn into like an investigator before I eat anything out in public because of my shellfish allergy. I mean, if I consume the wrong thing, that thing will cause my lungs to close up, and I have a very difficult time breathing. And the only thing that I'm going to need is medical assistance ASAP, pronto. But this one particular, I think it may have been Soul Food Bistro, I don't recall, but they had like this very tender and tasty, juicy chicken on a stick. I had a few of those bad boys. So as I'm going down the line, because they had like a little self-serve line of, hors d'oeuvres that you can enjoy. I'm going down the line, reading the little cards and everything to make sure I don't consume the wrong thing, because y'all be having like those seafood entrees looking real good. It was like some crab balls that were like fried. And I was like, oh, I want one of those. And I was like, well, hold up, let me read the little card. And then I realized it was crab meat. Yeah, you would have set your boy up for the okie doke. So I had to bypass that. So I'm continuing down the line, and then I come across this one vendor who had their station set up. And so I thought I grabbed a meatball. I thought it was a meatball on the stick. I was like, oh, this look good. Yeah, let me go ahead and eat this. So I took a bite. Well, it was bite size, so I put the whole thing in my mouth. But when I took a bite, I immediately knew it was not a meatball. What it was like a strawberry and cream, like little donut thing on a stick. And before I knew it, I was 8 strawberry and cream ball things in. Okay? They almost had to call security to get me away from that station because I just kind of pitched my tent right there. And I kept eating it and eating it. And, I've been really good with sticking to, my diet switch up coming into the new year. I've been very diligent with ensuring I don't eat a whole lot of sweets because I'm a recovering junk food junkie. Okay? But don't push me. I will relapse very quickly, and I almost relapsed at Think Bold thanks to, and they gave me a card. I just don't have their information right now. Otherwise, I will put them on blast. Giving them a shout out, but I would still put them on blast. Had me sitting up there about to overdose on little strawberry donut ball things. And I loved it. I loved it. And then the owner, I'm trying to tell her as I'm stuffing these things in my mouth, I've been doing real good this year. I've lost 25 pounds and I haven't been eating any sweets. And she's like, oh, well, baby, you go right on ahead. You earned it. Have another one. And then she says there's like another bowl of little crumble ball things. She's like, here, try one of these. I said, well, what is this? She said, don't worry about it. Just eat it. So I take a bite of it, and it was good. It was some sort of pound cake flavored, how does she term it? It's like a pound cake covered grape. What do you have to be doing to come up with an idea to dip a grape in some pound cake batter and say, yeah, this is going to be real good? And don't get me wrong, it was quite tasty. And then she says to me, well, you did good for the day. You had you some fruit. Ma'am, I'm six covered grapes in now. What is your phone number? I need a dozen of these at home. So they represented very well at the Think Bold Festival. That was just the Friday night mixer. And then Saturday is when the different workshops and things of that nature took place. The different workshops were themed with guest speakers. I know Dr. Shalita McGowan was there. Powerful story with Dr. Shalita McGowan. So the McGowans, they are my chiropractor. I see them regularly. Well, I'm seeing them more regularly now. Okay, I had like a 2-year hiatus because I was feeling good. But back in November, I had a little issue with my back that I hurt in the gym. But Dr. Shalita McGowan has a very powerful story that I think Saturday was probably her first time sharing that story publicly. And I am not going to steal her thunder. In June, I'm working to get Dr. Royce McGowan, her husband, in on the show because June is Men's Health Month. So I'll have Dr. McGowan. I'll also have Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark is actually my primary care physician. They'll be in the studio, but I'm going to work to get Dr. Shalita McGowan in to talk about her story because, man, oh, man, oh, man. When she began sharing publicly some of the things that she's gone through, you heard a gasp throughout the crowd. Would never have imagined she's overcome some of the things that have come her way. But, powerful story. But I'll get her in to share that story with us as well. There were some other phenomenal women on the panel. That particular panel was specifically of empowered women here in the city of Jacksonville and sharing more information with, other ladies there in the audience on how to get to that next level of their profession, business, and so forth. Great time. So then they transition off stage. And then the next session were with some venture capital investors. That's the one I was there for. I was all in. Front row. iPad open, taking notes, whole 9 yards. And I got to be honest with you. What I loved was that one of the gentlemen is an African-American owner of a venture capital firm right here in Jacksonville. I never would have known he existed or that the firm existed had I not gone to the Think Bold Festival. And one of the things that this gentleman in particular stated, his name is Jimmy Stallings. Jimmy Stallings is his name. Feel free to look him up. One of the things that he said when he first opened up was, I want to thank each of you for coming out this morning because I recognize it as a beautiful Saturday morning. You could have easily stayed home, but you decided to come out and get some information to learn how to get yourself or your business to the next level. And I got to be honest, I was sitting in the front seat. I said, yeah, he's talking about me because I almost didn't go yesterday morning. Why? Because the bed felt good to me. Okay? I wake up at 3 o'clock every day except Saturday. So I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 days a week. I want to be able to sleep in on a Saturday. I want to eat cereal and watch cartoons. I don't even know if they make cartoons no more. I want to be able to lounge around in my underoos and just kind of, let whatever be is going to be on a Saturday. But yesterday I said, you know what, Octavius, I've experienced this before. I said I was going to go. I don't break promises to myself. I'm going. So get this. I went out. I still did my run. Ran my 6 miles. I actually ran it in record time. Surprised myself yesterday morning. Went home, got cleaned up, headed to the Hyatt. Went to that session, and I loved every bit of it. After that panel, the next panel was Lil Duval. Jacksonville's very own. Jacksonville's favorite son. Lil Duval, he's funny, but he's a mess. Shared some great insights with the younger people, but my guy has no filter whatsoever. It don't matter if he's on his social media. It doesn't matter if he's on a record, and it definitely didn't matter him being on a stage at a business conference. My guy has no filter whatsoever. But he shared some great information and insights with the young people that were in attendance. So shout out once again to Troy McNair and Mo Henderson with Think Bold Conference and Festival. Looking forward to it next year. Hopefully they'll bring it back, and the city of Jacksonville will be able to show up and represent once again to show support. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. As I stated at the beginning of the show, there is a lot that has happened this past week in our city. And the first piece that I'll touch base on, sending my prayers, thoughts, and condolences to the family of Charles Faggart. If you are unfamiliar with the story of Charles Faggart, he was a food truck owner here in Jacksonville. He was arrested on Monday, I believe, for a domestic dispute. Was taken to the detention center downtown. Mr. Faggart was pronounced deceased by Thursday, this past Thursday. The details surrounding his death are still unclear. Here's what we know so far. He was arrested on Monday. Tuesday, he was transported with serious injuries to, I don't know if it was the JSO's infirmary or the local hospital, I'm not sure. Wednesday, Sheriff T.K. Waters announced that 8 corrections officers were being removed and 1 sergeant was being removed from their duties. Thursday, Mr. Faggart was dead. What is going on? What is going on downtown? Now, according to 2 different law enforcement sources, this information was shared with one of our local news outlets by 2 different law enforcement sources. They stated that Mr. Faggart was resisting. They didn't state how he was resisting. They didn't state what he was resisting. They weren't exactly sure. But it said that Mr. Faggart was resisting. He was then restrained in some sort of chair or device that they have there at JSO. He was restrained. They were eventually able to restrain him. While restrained, Mr. Faggart was pepper sprayed. Apparently, he then calmed down, was returned to his cell. And then once returning to his cell, he began, listen to what I'm saying to you. The law enforcement sources stated that when Mr. Faggart returned to his cell, that Mr. Faggart began bashing his head against the cell wall. Then corrections officers went to his cell, saw the state that he was in, and sought to provide him medical attention. According to an inmate, the inmate contacted Mr. Faggart's girlfriend and communicated to his girlfriend that he saw Mr. Faggart being taken out of the cell by the officers and that Mr. Faggart was unrecognizable. Mr. Faggart was taken to a medical facility. He was pronounced brain dead at a certain point and officially announced as being deceased on Thursday. 8 corrections officers were removed and stripped of their authority, as was 1 sergeant. Pay close attention to the words, the specific word choices that you see in media. I've shared with you that the PR spin, word soup, is something that's very common. Whenever a business entity or organization releases something to the media, listen to me, they are not releasing that just by happenstance. They take their time to specifically choose the words that they want to use to craft a narrative. You follow me? So when you hear 8 Jacksonville Sheriff's Corrections officers and 1 sergeant was stripped of their authority and removed, what comes to mind for you? Does your mind assume they were fired? Does your mind assume those individuals are now experiencing the consequences of their potential actions? Because it's also been stated that there is an ongoing investigation. JSO has reached out to the FBI as well to assist with this investigation. But my question is, why were these 8 corrections officers and 1 sergeant removed? Why were they removed? What's their involvement in this situation? You don't just randomly choose somebody to remove. And I keep repeating that word remove on purpose. Does your mind automatically assume when the news announced on Wednesday that JSO had removed 8 corrections officers, 1 sergeant, stripping them of their authority and removing them, did you assume they were terminated? Because I can tell you, if you assumed that, as I assumed when I first heard it, I assumed they had been, were being positioned to be terminated. I assumed that until I looked into it deeper. The 2 different law enforcement sources have confirmed that each of those officers have been reassigned with pay. They were removed from the duties that they were performing at the correctional facility and reassigned with pay until the investigation culminates. Now, one of the things that I've been very vocal about on this show is that I have apprehensions with law enforcement. That's across the board. Because historically, people who look like me and live in our community, historically, have seen disproportionate uses of force and an abuse of power from individuals wearing uniforms and a badge. We've seen it. Whether it's an abuse of power, whether it's murdering us in the streets. So yes, I got a little PTSD when it comes to trusting everything that is stated from someone wearing an officer's uniform. Now, don't misunderstand nor misquote what I am saying. I do not dislike police. I partner with the Police Athletic League. However, questions are the answers to our problems. We have to be willing to attack the tough questions, ask the tough questions if we really want to see resolution, if we really want to see change. So I've been very vocal about that since this show started in September. And I've also have shared with you back in October when the Georgia-Florida game took place and there were those different incidents involving Jacksonville Sheriff's officers fighting with fans. I shared on one week, I'm like, hey, yo, I saw the video. JSO out there kicking butt and taking names. What's going on? But then a couple of weeks later, Sheriff T.K. Waters and his team, they did like a play-by-play overview with video explaining what was going on. And I said, well, you know what? The video evidence don't lie. That makes sense. I understand why JSO responded the way that they did. During that same time, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine that I work out with at the gym who's an FBI agent. He said, hey, I got to be honest with you. If those individuals had attempted that with me, I would have tore them a new one as well. I get that. The shooting that took place in Arlington off Justina Road, once again, Sheriff T.K. Waters and their transparency, sharing the body cam footage of the young man that was running. And unfortunately, he had the gun in his hand Whether he was tossing the gun or not, when JSO is in pursuit, don't touch that thing. Don't leave that heat alone. The young man was shot. He continued running. The bullet is not what caused him to lose his life. The fact that he continued running and the heart pumping the way that it did caused him to bleed out. So this situation with Mr. Faggart, I have some concerns. Absolutely. I have concerns as to why 8 corrections officers and 1 sergeant was stripped of authority and also removed, that we later found they were actually reassigned with pay. However, because of what I've seen so far with JSO's transparency, I'll share with you, yes, I have concerns. But I'll also share, I'm going to reserve my opinions until all the information comes out. I'm going to reserve my opinions until all the information comes out. I have some concerns. Charles Faggart bashing his own head up against a wall to the point of being unrecognizable and later pronounced brain dead. My mind has a difficult time processing and believing that. But I'm going to wait to see what all the details are. My brother has been interviewed by several news stations. My brother owns a food truck, Kettle and Spoon, Stevan Davis. You may have heard or seen the TV interviews. That is my older brother. We came from the same stork delivered he and I. All right? That is my big brother. My brother knew Charles. He said, "Hey man, Charlie, nah, the way they described him, that's not Charlie." There will be a peaceful protest taking place today at 1 o'clock at the Duval County Jailhouse in honor of Mr. Faggart. The family wants answers. The friends want answers. The community wants answers. We need answers. 833-758-1065. That's the number to call. You're listening to Front Page Jacksonville. More is on the way.
Now back to the show that informs you and discusses the issues. Front Page Jacksonville on Hot 106.5.
833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville and share your thoughts, comments, and opinions on any of the topics that we're covering during today's show. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Octavius, the $1 Million Voice Davis. I want to spin the block very quickly on a story that I opened up with. I gave a quick recap on the Think Bold conference and festival that I had an opportunity to attend over the weekend, but I forgot to share with you another thing that I really love that the Think Bold Festival has done. They invited 4 students from Delaware State University to come and participate in the Think Bold Festival. 4 young men at that. I got to represent for our fellas. Shout out to Eddie Ward, Ed Green, Elijah, and Nazari Pringle. Those are the 4 young men from Delaware State University that had an opportunity to come down and participate in the Think Bold Festival. They have interests in cybersecurity, accounting, banking analysis, and content creation. So I love seeing where young men are being invited and included into spaces that's going to expose them to something beyond the gridiron, something beyond the football field. There's nothing wrong with hoop dreams. Let me state that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to become a professional athlete. However, when you look at the statistical data of the number of young people who actually play the sport and desire to become a professional in that respective sport, the odds of them actually going to the pros are extremely small. And even if they do go to the pros, they need a plan if in the event injury occurs or their contracts aren't renewed and the inevitable, they decide to retire. What will you do once the game is over? Well, these young men say, hey, look, cybersecurity, accounting, banking analysis, content creation, that's what I want to get into. And we really need more spaces like this for young African American men. We do. I remember a few years ago, this must have been 2019, Wanda P and I were having a conversation because I noticed at the time, I think my son, he's now 15 in ninth grade. But at the time, I think he was in third, maybe fourth grade. And I was trying to find a STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math. I was trying to find a STEM program to enroll my son in for the summer. And much to my surprise, I could not find a STEM program that was pro African American male. But I saw an overabundance of STEM programs that catered towards African American young ladies. And so, you know, there are a lot of great organizations out there, a lot of great programs out there, a lot of phenomenal resources out there. I won't dispute that. However, I will say in our efforts towards empowering young women, let's not forget about empowering young men as well. African American young men are also devoid of many opportunities to get into certain spaces. So let's remember to reach back and open the doors for them as well. Something I found interesting. I want to go over to the Southside real quick. Well, you know what? We'll go to the Southside. I'll make this work. I'll connect this. We're going to go to the Southside real quick. I'm going to give a shout out to my alma mater high school, Sandalwood. And here's why. So more than 1,600 Duval County high school students pre-registered. They pre-registered to vote in March. So the Duval County Supervisor of Elections, Jerry Holland, announced that 1,623 students submitted their voter registration applications early. Now, I'm stating pre-registered because at 16, they are able to submit their voter application to pre-register. So if they submit it when they're 16, once they turn 18, they will automatically be registered to vote. It won't be one of those situations that, okay, now I'm 18, now let me go on out here and register to vote. No. The Supervisors of Elections Office, they went to the schools to get these young people signed up, which I think is a really great idea. According to last month's data from the Supervisor of Elections, people aged 25 or younger make up less than 11% of Duval's registered voters. Less than 11%. But the Supervisors of Elections Office, they went out there and they said, you know what, we're going to go out here to these schools, we're going to hit the ground, and we're going to get these young people signed up to allow them to pre-register so that they can be eligible to vote once they turn 18 years old. So in Duval County, the large school, they got a lot of numbers from Sandalwood High. Shout out to the Saints. The medium school, Frank H. Peterson, they signed up a lot of students. And then the small school, Bridge to Success Academy. In the private school sector, the large school that had a lot of enrollments was Bishop Kenny. The medium school was Bowles, and the small school was Pace Center for Girls. So love getting these young people involved, getting them acclimated, and getting them prepared to register to vote. Because whether it's the local election, state election, or the presidential election, your vote is going to be counted on. Your vote will matter, and it will be needed for whichever partisan party you choose to be a part of. That's irrelevant. Just go out and vote. Just go out and cast your vote so that your interests can be represented from that standpoint. And then the other thing on the South Side that I want to get to as well. So I found this pretty interesting. Have you seen where residents in the Southside Estates area are protesting the approved plan for 78 townhomes to be built in their neighborhood? And there was a caveat that I saw. I'm like, wow, that sounds very familiar. Very familiar. These residents, they're stating that there was no sign of notice placed in their neighborhood prior to the rezoning being approved. They said that the proper signage that's supposed to go up before a vote for rezoning happens did not take place. And that sounds mighty familiar. Allow me to jog your memory. On this show, we stand with our brothers and sisters in Brentwood against the morgue being erected in the Brentwood community. And do you know what I've also heard the residents in Brentwood share? That the required signage that is supposed to be placed before any voting takes place in regards to the decisions about that community, they said the signage was not placed. They said that the signage was not placed the way that it was supposed to. Well, now here it is. Same thing is being said over on the Southside. What's really going on? What's really going on? Who is in charge of the signs? Who's in charge of putting up the signs? Who? Whose responsibility? What division of City of Jacksonville assigns the signage person? Says, hey, you're it. You're the person that has to go out and make sure these signs are placed in this particular neighborhood before this particular date, because we got to vote on this zoning thing or we got to vote on this particular other thing. You're the person. We see tax companies. We see restaurants. We even see home builders with the person standing on the side of the road with the sign, dancing, twirling the sign and everything else. And they're simply trying to get our money. But you mean to tell me the city can't assign a sign person to go out and put the signs up like they're supposed to? At least go out here and dance with the sign or something in the neighborhood. You know, what's that window of time before the sign has to be placed up? Was it 24 hours before, 48 hours before? Just send a little dancing sign person out there. All right, maybe somebody in the office don't want to get hot and sweaty, but look, there's plenty of people that's willing to make a few extra dollars to go out there and dance with your sign. Why are we seeing this constant? It's becoming a constant in different neighborhoods now. We can't just pin the blame on the north side. We can't just say this is out east. We can't just say that this is happening in African-American communities where the proper signage isn't getting put up, because this particular area of Southside Estates is predominantly Caucasian. But it's a similar thing. There's legally supposed to be signage put up before developers move on it. Signs from developers weren't put up to notify residents in the time they're required by law. Who has the authority to cut the sign person out? Signs matter, man. So here it is now. These residents in Southside Estates, they're now protesting because they're saying, look, we don't want these 78 townhomes in our neighborhood. We don't want it. Well, can you imagine how the residents in Brentwood feel with a 300-body morgue that's being crammed down their throats in their neighborhood? All because the necessary signage that was supposed to be placed so that residents would have an opportunity to come out and allow their voices to be heard before voting takes place, it didn't happen. And what's the outcome? Someone else is getting their way, namely the individuals with the deep pockets Who's going to benefit from these 78 townhomes? Who's going to benefit from a 300-body morgue? Stick around. More is on the way. This is Front Page Jacksonville.
Now back to the show that informs you and discusses the issues. Front Page Jacksonville on Hot 106.5.
I think it may have been last week's show. If it wasn't last week's show, it's definitely been within the past few weeks where I shared one of my growing concerns, and I just came across another story that's confirming this fact. One of my growing concerns about the things that are happening at a federal level, namely from the White House. For whatever reason, local and state entities are mimicking those same efforts that we're seeing federally. I just came across this story. Florida universities to deputize campus police for immigration enforcement. Why? Why? There was a story in the news maybe 2 weeks ago where I forget which, it was an Ivy League school where immigration officers arrived to get a student. And she ran. Homegirl's like, oh, it's 100 miles a run. You got to catch me. She was out of there. I do not understand this assault when it comes to galvanizing immigration officers and going on people's jobs, going to schools, and, deporting. I guess that's the next phase once they detain them, deporting them. Now, again, I understand if this is illegal immigration. I may not necessarily agree with the tactic, but at least I could understand the thought process. If we're talking about illegal immigration, okay, then we might have something if we're talking illegal immigration. However, when we see that individuals have enrolled in schools, matter of fact, we don't have to see it. I can tell you because I used to work in education. Not only did I work at charter schools, I've also worked at colleges. In order to enroll in a college or in a school, it requires legal documentation, legal United States documentation. So even if it's an immigrant seeking to enroll in the school, there's certain documents that they are able to bring in that is given to them by the United States government to allow them to enroll in that particular institution. So for Florida universities to now want to try to galvanize their own immigration officers on campus, well, hold on. We're talking about the same students that your university chose to enroll once they provided you the proper documentation for them to become a student. Now you want to galvanize immigration officers for what? What is the purpose? This makes no sense to me. This makes absolutely no sense to me. This is yet another story that I'll continue to keep an eye on because I'm very curious to see just how deep this rabbit hole is going to go. But then here's the other part that I want to see. Because while state and local municipalities are posturing themselves to mimic what Trump is doing in the White House, come 2027, if he isn't reelected, which I don't even know if he'll be eligible because he can only serve 2 terms, assuming he doesn't choose to obey the Constitution in some kind of way, I'm going to be very curious to see if a new elected president gets into office who has a complete 180 degree difference of opinion when it comes to immigration and everything else, will the same state and local municipalities then look to say, oh, well, we're now going to do things this new way? That's the political carnival circus that I despise that. Why disrupt people's livelihoods, tear apart families, all for the sense of a political agenda? This makes no sense to me. I'll get off that soapbox. Jack, my guy. Welcome back, sir. Last week, we had Wanda P in the studio producing with us because you, my friend, had a chance to take to the road.
Oh, yeah. I just recently, it's great to be back, but last weekend it was Dreamville Fest for J. Cole, if any of you all are familiar. It was, my first time, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yep.
First time hanging out there, really, so it was really cool to be up there. Got to see a bunch of artists, hot names like Lil Wayne,
yep.
Birdman, Juvenile, J. Cole, of course, and some people from his Dreamville label, Wale, if you're familiar, Omen, Loot, Boz, we were talking about
yep.
Off break. My favorite set out of all the Dreamville people, Boz was amazing. I mean, J. Cole took the show at the end.
Of course.
Bringing out Erykah Badu for his set. Yeah. But, man, Boz was just different being there, like feeling his emotion in the track too, because actually he told us a story about 2 years ago, because this is the fifth Dreamfest, fifth and final air quotes.
Sure, yeah.
Y'all can't see.
They'll just probably change up the name for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. But Boz was saying he was going to bring his mom out to hear the roar of the crowd. And unfortunately, a year past, she passed away. So
wow.
he did a little tribute to her. They had a whole video up for her, and it was just great to see. The people who are performing, they're real humans too. They have real issues, and it's just that set felt so personal to me.
Yeah,
it was really, really sick. But
well, I gotta tell you, Jack, man, I envy you a little bit, man, because what are you, 22, 23?
Yeah, 22.
22
going
years
on
old.
23.
Man, you out here living, my guy. Every time I turn around, you at some kind of music festival. You're out with the friends hanging out. I love that, bro. Enjoy it. Live it up.
Got to get the good while you can. You know?
Is there? Have you ever been to Coachella, or do you have any interest in going to Coachella?
Now, Coachella, that's a little intense for for me. Have you seen the stories that have been coming out about that?
Recently, no.
So this year's Coachella, apparently a disorganized mess. It's not going too well. Some festival goers saying they were out, it's in the desert, California.
Sure, yeah.
They're out in the desert, no water, no bathrooms, waiting 12 hours in line.
Yeah.
Like, just to get in. And, no accommodations. They're in a parking lot,
Wow.
Nobody's helping them out. And, I mean, they're getting in eventually, but, I mean,
sure.
I wouldn't want to spend 12 hours in a line waiting to see, missing all these sets probably, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I definitely do love, like, appreciating live music, individual concerts or festivals like the Dreamville Festival or the Camp Flog Gnaw that Tyler, the Creator, does. Really like hip-hop, R&B, pop, indie, kind of smooth, like groovy music, that's my vibe for sure.
Well, that's what's up. Well, keep doing it, man. Keep doing it. I love seeing you getting out there, living and loving and enjoying your life, dude.
One thing I do want to comment on.
Yeah.
J. Cole, Jermaine, you drain my pockets. You drain my pockets. I got this fresh new hat. I got some sweatpants. I got a blanket back at home. I got a hoodie back at home. Man, I'm gonna be working hard these next few months.
But the swag is dope, though. I'm digging that hat. I'm digging the pants. So it was worth it, my guy.
Yes,
it was
sir.
worth it. Indeed.
Thank you, Octavius. A co-sign from you is always good.
Hey, well, indeed. Hey, you listen to Front Page Jacksonville here on Hot 106.5 FM, Duval's only R&B, WHJX, Ponte Vedra Beach. You know what? We're gonna actually take an early break because I want to get set up for our guest that's in the studio with us, Overseer Marcellas Williams. We are about to talk about the state of the Black church. I know Easter is coming up. I know some of y'all already got your Easter outfit pressed and laid out. But we want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the African American church experience. So we have that coming up in just a few moments. 833-758-1065 is the number to call. This is Front Page Jacksonville.
Front Page Jacksonville resumes on Hot 106.5.
Easter is right around the corner. And traditionally, Easter Sunday, the church, the family goes to church. Little man, little mama might have an Easter speech that they gonna do. Congregation is packed. And then when service lets out, y'all going to get some food. But over the years, there has been something going on with regards to the state of the African American church, whereby more and more people are finding themselves walking away from the church, or more specifically, organized religion. So to join me on Front Page Jacksonville today to dive into this conversation is Pastor J. Marcellas Williams of Life House. Pastor Williams, good morning. Welcome to Front Page.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Octavius. It is an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Glad to have you.
Absolutely.
Now, you're very active on social media. I don't know if it's daily or weekly, but you do a live on your social media.
Matter of fact, it's daily. Actually, it's now just to kind of take a break from myself. It's Tuesday through Friday. It's called Raise to Praise, and it's on Facebook Live. And actually, people chime in from all across the country, and it's live. And it's every single Tuesday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m.
So, give us a quick rundown about yourself. Pastor Williams, how did you become Pastor Williams? What's been? I know it's been a journey, but give us the abbreviated version.
So, abbreviated version. My father has been a pastor all my life.
Okay.
I've been in church all my life, and I went to Douglas Anderson School of the Performing Arts, one of the best schools.
Oh, see, now here you go. But no, DA, they dope.
Yes,
DA
sir.
is dope.
As a vocal major, and then from there, I started as the choir director of my father's church. And I think it was about 18, I received the call or the assignment to preach.
Yeah.
And so I told my dad, and he cultivated me in that endeavor. And I started pastoring. I went off to school in Atlanta for 2 years, 2004, 2006. Came back being called to pastor a church, and I've been pastoring now for 18 years.
Wow. And you're married? I saw your lovely bride on social media.
That's my sweetheart. Marquita. Yeah, I've been married for 18 years. We have 3 children, 22, 16, and 14.
Wow.
15 in a couple months. And
so, beautiful family. You've been raised in church. Mm-hmm. Church is what you've known. And so let's dive into this conversation. I saw something recently. It's actually a article written on WFSU.org. Mm-hmm. And the title of the article is Coming to Terms with the Black Church's Changing Role. Mm-hmm. But what the article references is that the Black church is actually preparing to go through its 3rd Reconstruction. Mm-hmm. Now, the first Reconstruction speaks about that time period ending at the end of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. The second Reconstruction, of course, being during the Civil Rights Movement. And now this 3rd area of Reconstruction, it's identifying the time from former President Barack Obama to where we are today, and just a lot of the changing ideologies that are happening within the African American church. Now, we had a chance to chat briefly off mic, which I'll get to in just a moment, but social media, AI, so many things are impacting society today. How are you seeing these things impacting the congregation?
Well, very good question. And I believe in the church. I believe in the community of the church, and I believe in the purpose of the church. I do believe, as you shared, those particular dispensations in last not even 100 years were purposeful. Like at one point, you had to have the Martin Luther Kings that were out there that were being the civil rights leaders, and it was a politically driven, and that was a purpose. But even then, that was not the totality of the church. Everybody has their own, bend and their own calling and their own task.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King and those that were surrounding him had that task. But even when Martin Luther King Jr. was doing that, you still had others who were not engaged in that, because everybody didn't need that,
Yeah.
And so, but of course, you take that one thing or that one assignment that was quite relevant, and it really took over everything. And it overshadows everything else. But that doesn't mean that was the only thing that was happening. Because I see, you have people that say, well, the church got to get back to us, being the justice people and advocating and so forth and so on. that is never left. It's just whose assignment is it? You know what I mean? And because everybody's assignment is not the same.
That's an excellent point, because in this third reconstruction that the author is speaking about in this article, it mentions that with the Black Lives Matter movement and the George Floyd unfortunate situation that we saw a few years back, like, where is the Black church in, throughout all of these times? But as you're mentioning, that's not necessarily every pastor's assignment for their respective church. Right. So let's talk about ideology for a moment. Right? So
let's get it.
Let's jump into it. Now, I've shared with you, and this may be the listener's first time hearing this, I don't subscribe to organized religion, right? I don't consider myself to be a Christian. I was at one time, right? Was a youth minister, went through seminary, was a part of establishing a church in Tallahassee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
And so, but in 2007, I came to a point where I decided, you know what? I'm going to fall back from all this organized religion stuff, and I'm just going to focus on this one-on-one thing.
What was the crux of that decision?
You want to go there?
Talk to me.
We going there?
I like I was set up.
We got time?
Kenya, Jack, y'all should have told me y'all sat me next to. He done left the church. So yeah, what was the crux of that decision?
Yeah, great question. So the quick version, I almost committed suicide.
Wow.
I was in a deep, dark depression. And the only way that I could see my way out was by terminating my life. And so in my apartment off of White Drive on West Tennessee Street, anybody that's familiar with Tallahassee, I was sitting there and I began the process, okay, well, this is how I'm about to do this. And so during that instant, when I started the process of planning out my demise, I heard a very familiar voice that I've heard often throughout my walk. You can either take your life or dedicate your life pursuing what you're truly passionate about. That was all I heard. That was all I needed to hear. Because
I'm glad you heard it.
In that moment, it gave me the clarity from all that darkness that I was being suffocated by to I'm like, oh wait, there's another option. And so from that, I said, okay, I'm going to step back from all the things that have led me to this place so that I can begin to reassess who I really am and whose I really am. And one of the things that I recognized, Pastor Williams, during that time is that my heart was dedicated to God, but my actions were dedicated to man. And so with that, I had to detach from man-made structures so that I can gain a better understanding of who I am and who the Most High is to me. So that's what led to me stepping away from organized religion.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of influences that causes one to go to God or causes one to go to church or not go. Right. So we talked about social media and even the notion that there's a decline in the, I'm not sure if it's the church or just the Black church. But so a few things to that. One, now, like say for instance, in the Martin Luther King Jr. era, there was statistically about 65,000 churches, right? Now it's like 399, almost 400,000 churches. So if there is, I don't know that there is a full decline. I think it's just a lot more expanded, a lot more spread out, you know, where back in the day you had, those main churches that you went to in the city, even in Jacksonville, you had those main Baptists, the main Pentecostal churches, the main, AME churches. And now you've got like 1,000 of them on one block. And so you may have the same percentage amount of people that actually go to church. It's just there's so many different options. And then even with social media, so you got Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X, B93, all of them, right?
Right.
And so one of the things is that, we've demonized social media. It's taking us away from God and now the church is involved in it and so forth. honestly, I think the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Do you think Jesus would have had an Instagram page?
I think Jesus would have 5 Instagram pages.
Jesus would have been on TikTok. Him and the disciples, they would have been doing that whole joint, right?
Yeah, all
because
day.
They would have been able to draw.
Exactly. And so even now we got social media.
Yeah.
It's the same thing back in the day when we had magazines and radio. It's just now all in one spot. So all the gossip that we get from social media, all of the drama we get from social media, that's nothing new. Like it just happened. You just had to go to Ebony, Jet,
yep.
You know what I mean?
Word Up,
Vibe, Charisma. You had to go to that, and you had to listen to the radio stations, and you had, you could count the number of people that were influencing our mind. Because on media, magazines and radio, they told you what the new style was, what the new sound was, what the new color for the season was, and so forth, and who was sleeping with who, and so forth. And now on social media, you just have millions of them doing the very same thing. So the same way that our minds were influenced back in the day with the antiquated devices like magazines, newspapers, and such, it's the same way. It's just all compacted in one area. So I don't think that social media is a different demonic media force of influence for the church. I actually think that it's a tool that can help if we don't demonize it because we're so judgmental.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that has helped the church be more receptive of including social media, COVID.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, I began seeing so many churches pivot with their services to being streamed online. They had to, essentially, if they wanted to remain relevant and still be able to provide an outlet for their members to be able to hear the word. So along these lines of social media, let's talk generation, because you mentioned that your dad was a pastor, you came up, going to church. So church day, that's all you knew. We're in a very different time now. These young people, depending upon what platform you're on, they call them YNs.
Yes, they do. Oh my goodness.
These young people different.
Yes, they are.
Okay. and so different youth auxiliaries and things of that nature back in the day that may have been able to draw in or keep young people's interest. This is a very different day and age. How can the church engage the upcoming generation of young people with so many things vying for their attention and time?
I think it's one word: authenticity.
Yeah.
If you are authentic, I don't know none of them. I don't know Lil Baby, Da Baby. I don't know Glorilla. I don't know none of them. Right. I don't know none of their music. And everybody he was just naming Bosh and B and all them other J. Cole. I don't know none of them. Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't get up and do my sermons trying to do their lyrics and trying to be cool or whatever that is. I'm authentic. And I also try not to be so foreign to their normal life. One of my guys is actually my music director. His name is Jeff McIntyre, and Jeff is about 27, 28, around that age. He asked me. He said to me,
"Freddie McIntyre is related to Freddie."
Yes,
McIntyre?
absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know who he is. And so he said to me that he wants the church, because he's church. He loves God. He wants the church to compete with the rest of his life. In that sense, like when he goes to the gym, whatever the amenities and accoutrements that he gets at the gym, and then he goes to the area that he goes to eat at, and then he goes to school where he goes to work, and it all kind of is up to par. It all kind of sounds like my language. I don't want to go to the church and go back 30 years when I go to the church.
Right.
And so that's important, that it has to make sense to their normal life. They don't want to walk into a whole nother world for an hour and a half that has nothing to do with the rest of their life. It's very disconnected, and then go back to their world. So I think it needs to be authentic. The pastor, the leaders, whoever they are, have to be themselves according to the Word of God. Because sometimes, because you go to our church, Lifehouse Inc., which is the best church in the city.
And you're not biased. You're not biased at all. Not biased at all.
But we're going to have on, they're going to have on hats, ball caps. They're going to have on flip-flops. They're going to have on, and some are going to have on, the full church attire, whatever. But everybody's authentic. You do what it is that you do. That has nothing to do with your soul. we tatted up, the whole 9 yards. Now for some, I'm not sure the type of church you came from,
sure.
But some of them would say we're going straight to hell, like we're going, and Jack going with us, But
Jack, like, what did I do?
But it's authentic, right? And I can feel relevant, and people can feel relevant, and then it actually matches the rest of my life.
I love that word, authenticity, and I think that's so real because I think that's it. And not just young people, but I think people in general. So case in point, the gym that I go to, there's a brother that's in there, and like for a couple of weeks, it's like, hey man, you should come to my church, this, that, and the third. So the first time or two, I was trying to be like, hey brother, appreciate the offer, man. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. But by that fourth or fifth time, I said, hey man, look, I ain't coming to your church.
Right.
Because, and I was telling my homeboy who's very involved at his church, I said, man, look, I get it, right? I understand wanting to invite people to your church and the whole nine, but why are you more focused on getting me into the doors of your church? Why aren't you more focused on knocking on the door of my heart and talking to me about where I am, and just keep it real, man. Let's chop it up one-on-one. Don't, because the building ain't it.
Right.
You're the church. The building ain't it. You get me? But that authenticity. I'm the type of person where, because I have a sales background, I'm like, okay, you do know that you're just trying to sell me on coming to your church.
I don't like sales pitches.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone does, especially now we're talking about church. So is church just as important today as it was 30 years ago?
I don't like sales pitches, but you do have to sell it because it is important.
Yeah.
Anything that is important, you're going to have to sell it. Yeah. And sometimes it'll sell itself, but it's still being sold. I think the church, because the church is important in two regards. It helps you get a real relationship with God and cultivate it. And secondly, it helps you to have a relationship with people. It's community. For some, they've been there for, like I've been in church for all my life. I'm saved. I don't have to get saved again. That's done, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm giving back as a pastor. I'm teaching others for salvation, and we just get together, just like you get together with your family reunion or your buddies. Y'all go out. That's where we gather to draw on one another, energy, and to just fellowship and worship together, have fun, and so it's not the organization of it is that you have to organize. You get a lot of people together, and we all want to come together and just be a part and be around one another. Yeah. Then it has to be organized, but it's organized not to the point of legalism. It's organized because we just want to be in community with one another.
Sure. And in my humble opinion, please share if you disagree. I think one of the best ways you can sell church is how you live it. Because again, I'm into fitness. The best way a personal trainer can get more clients is if they are a walking billboard of fitness.
Mike Tyson, yeah.
Yeah, you get me? Because I've seen some cats.
There's this new guy on social media that's doing a Saratoga bottle.
Oh yeah. I can't think of his name. He's from Jacksonville.
Is he from Jacksonville?
He's from Jacksonville.
What?
Yeah. I think he went to Reigns.
And he's selling it for sure. He's got like 12 million subscribers.
Yeah, and the brother's built like a tank.
And he needs a pastor.
You say, right? And so I know I have known people who have said that, I'm a personal trainer. I'm like, bro, train yourself first.
Right, exactly.
Because you don't look like,
exactly,
physique-wise, you don't look like a personal trainer. So I believe that that's one of the best ways. But then also, get to know people. Like case in point, if I were to go back to a church, there's a particular pastor where when we have conversations like, hey,
you really put a lot of emphasis on that if,
I do. Right? He said, let's go to the gun range. The fellas at the church, we're getting together at the gun range. Right. Come out with us.
Right.
Cool. Hey, man, how's your marriage?
Right, exactly.
You see what I'm saying? And because of that, me feeling as though that sense of authenticity of who I am as a person, how I'm doing as a person
is regarded.
It's regarded. Right. It's genuine. It's like, hey, come to my church. We're doing. Man, go to your church.
Right.
I'm busy, man. I got stuff to do. Right. And so, Pastor Williams, someone who's listening to this right now, may say, you know what? Well, I've been on the fence about whether I want to continue with church, or I'm like, nah, man, I'm done with church. church hurt, whatever the case may be, what would you say to that person who's listening right now?
Well, I would start by not having a conversation about church. I would start by having a conversation about God and being our creator and having a connection with him. And then if we want, we can stop the conversation there, because we don't have to talk about church. We don't have to go to that conversation. But if you are now curious about church, then I would say, I have a bride for 18 years. I love her. You cannot be nice to me and not nice to her. Yeah. And God has a bride, which he's called the church. You can't be nice to him and disregard his bride, because as I will not deal with you if I go to your home and you give me a glass and you give my wife a plastic cup, we're gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So God says that his church, his bride is the church. So you can't get him and disregard his bride. So that if we have a conversation about the church, then that's where it would go. After I know that you do want to connect with God first, then let's talk about what comes with that.
Yeah. Yeah. How can they get in contact with you if they would like to come and visit? How can they come and visit the church?
So, Octavius, if you want to come visit our church.
I had a feeling you was going to throw something. I had a feeling you was going to go for it.
Listen, let's get it. We are 2214 University Boulevard South, Jacksonville, Florida. It's called Life House. You can find us on social media, Life House, JAX, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, Life House Jax. We're on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock a.m. and on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. And, of course, you can also follow me on Raise to Praise, which is online. Raise to Praise, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. Tuesday to Friday on Facebook Live.
Excellent. Hey, well, that's Pastor Marcellas Williams of Lifehouse. You've heard him. He's giving you the rundown on how you can find out more about himself as well as the church. Pastor Williams, thank you so much for hanging out with me today on Front Page Jacksonville.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, stick around. More is on the way. This is Front Page Jacksonville.
The heartbeat of the community. Front Page Jacksonville returns on Hot 106.5.
833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to join in on Front Page Jacksonville. Good morning, Ryan Sinclair. How are you today, sir?
I'm fabulous, Doctor. How are you, man?
Hey, man. Grateful to be able to hear your voice on this beautiful Sunday morning, brother. What's good with you?
Oh, man. The Pastor Marcellas.
Yes, sir.
I agree with him. Everything other than he's got his own church, but he could have came to ours. Sound like he was trained. Sound like he was trained in my church. So I guess he's the new best church, and we're the established best church in Jacksonville.
So you had to represent this morning, huh?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, that's the thing that we understand where we are in our building, because I don't even want to call it my church. It's my building where we church at.
Sure.
And if I can leave that ad open, because my mama said behind that preposition. But anyway, that's what we talk about at St. John's. We talk about what's happening now, relating what God's word says for us to do. If you study anything, you know that this guy was a revolutionary. He went against the norm. He wasn't even stuck in them buildings for the most part.
Right. He was out with the people.
He was out with folks.
Right.
And, it's like in a hospital. You don't really go and take well people to the hospital. You got to go where the sick people are,
Ryan, let me ask you a question. Why do you think some churches have a hard time accepting that truth, in that the people don't have to be in your building? Why not go out to where the people are?
They have this richness, this thing of tradition. This is always how it's been. This is the way you do it, and there's no room for error, because they believe they're talking from God's point of view. They see God as this unwavering, rigid ramrod kind of person, and I don't think that. I think God is this person that's loving. I mean, you got to think about what we say He is. And then what we portray, we kind of don't represent what we talk about who God is.
Sure.
And so that's what I think happens a lot in our modern churches and communities, in the interaction between church and community.
I had a conversation with someone, this has been a while ago, And if you're just tuned in, you're listening to Front Page Jacksonville. On the phone lines with me right now is Ryan Sinclair. Before the break, my guest in the studio was Pastor J. Marcellas Williams, overseer of Lifehouse here in Jacksonville. And we were speaking about the state of the African-American community as it relates to the church. Well, Ryan, I had a conversation a while back with someone, and we were having I'll say a healthy debate about God. Now, I'll say this. First off, I don't refer to God as God, because to me, God is just a title. I say Most High. Right?
Yeah.
And
okay.
So the individual and I were going back and forth. I said, well, look, let me ask you a question. I said, do you believe God is limitless? I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. God is limitless. I said, okay, well, do you believe God can do anything? Oh, yeah, God can absolutely do anything. Okay, great. Then why are you trying to limit what God can and can't do to the confines of these 66 books of the Bible? Because some people will say, well, if it's not in the Bible, God ain't going to do it. Well, hold on now. You see what I mean? So what's your thought process on that, Ryan? Do you think that the Most High has the ability to do something miraculous that we've never seen before or has not previously been written about in the Bible?
Well, my deal on that is, I don't know if we actually got everything that was written.
Come on.
I'm in studying now, and there are some books that are gone based on some humans deciding.
Yes, sir.
This, that, and the other needs to be in there.
Yes, sir.
So if you want, I could.
And I'll add some context to that. The Council of Nicaea is who you're referring
Correct.
to.
Mm-hmm.
They excluded certain books of the Bible. Anyone who may have heard of the Apocrypha, those were books that were previously in the Bible. So I'm sorry, please continue.
That person, and then King James.
Yes.
He wanted the Bible to say that he was supposed to be the king, so he took some other stuff out. So you have to, it tells you to study. Because, you know, what we do, especially Black church, is we let the pastor or the overseer or whoever it is decide what God said.
Yeah, very true.
And I'm not sure that, you know, I don't know if he just touched everybody. I mean, he touched everybody, but sometimes it seems like it's some ulterior motive than what people are telling me, quote unquote, at the church.
Sure.
You know, and you have these people that use up there talking, and the pastors are late, but we're talking about the next phase of this service. We're talking about how we're going to reach folks. And what we do, like, I like what he said, you have to reach folks where they are.
Yeah.
Not force them to come where you are. You know, the reason I go where I go, I've been going to church my whole entire life, basically.
Yeah.
And my mother and grandmother were preachers. And they were ministers, but they didn't particularly stay within their denomination. They went to where it seemed like the word of God was the prevalent thing and not what this person thought or what they had to do.
Sure.
My grandmother was a prison chaplain.
Wow.
And so was my mother for her whole life.
Now, let me ask you about that, Ryan, because I'm familiar for a lot of churches and denominations in particular, they would not allow women to preach or minister or even have that title affixed to their name. How were your mom and grandmother able to navigate that terrain back in their day?
Okay, they were in CME.
Okay.
Christian Methodist. And my grandmother's grandfather, well, my mother's great-grandfather was the minister that changed it from the colored Methodist church to the Christian Methodist.
Wow.
When I was born. And because he saw that there were white folks that wanted to come to this church because of what they were doing and how they were doing their thing. And so he's like, we can't exclude nobody. God didn't exclude nobody. We can.
Yeah.
So at that point, when they got ordained, my mother got ordained at 45. And they told her they couldn't give her a church because she's going to have to retire in a couple of years. So they made her the prison minister, the prison chaplain ministry. So, you know, there's this thing that you got to do. God's got something for you to do. And whether you're going to do it or not, it's going to happen whether you want to or not.
Right.
So the deal is, what I saw from them is they lived in the faith and did what God told them, not what people was telling them. And I saw them thrive and function and be happy, joyous, and free their entire life. basically as much as I saw,
Right.
It wasn't a big Cadillac, it wasn't a big money. And I went to those big churches too and saw these people with all these things, and they were so miserable. They were so miserable because it seemed to me like they had a new God. The car, the house, the trophy wife, trophy husband, the best clothes on, the song. They were after the prosperity, it seemed so, but they were always miserable. I couldn't understand that. And so I looked at my mother and them, and by world standards, y'all don't have nothing, but by spiritual standards, they were happy.
Right.
They were mostly content with their stuff. Their biggest regrets and worries was about other people's stuff. It was more about other people. How can I help so-and-so? They need so. Like, we ain't got no money. Why are we giving them our money? But that was then. Now I understand it because that was what we were supposed to do.
Right.
So I applaud Pastor Marcellas for being the second church that got the real message. What I mean? But I just had to get on because I agree with that. There's this, and I would appeal to these pastors of these regular traditional places to open up their arms, open at the thing, and just let it happen. They say their arms are open, but it's dictated.
Sure.
Somebody say they went somewhere and they thought this was a welcoming place. And once they got him, it's like, welcome. Now we're going to fix you.
Right.
It's like, see, no, let the people come as they are. It ain't our fixing job. Our job is welcoming.
Yeah.
God's job is fixing.
I love it.
Me and Jack were talking about it. It's like, whether you go in a building or not, you still be hungry for God. You might not even know that's what you're hungry for.
Exactly.
Like you was talking about them little cinnamon ball things, whatever you was eating.
Yeah.
You was hungry for something. You didn't know what it was till you ate it.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, yeah, I like these grape things.
Right.
So you was hungry for that. You had a yearning for it, had no idea what it was until you ate it.
Right.
But you couldn't have ate it if you hadn't been at the place.
Come on,
so
Ryan.
If you don't come to the place, you can't get nothing to eat if you don't go to the restaurant. You can't find God if you don't go to the place where God is present. And the only way you know where God is present, just like you go to every kind of restaurant it is to see what kind of food you like, you got to go to visit a bunch of places. You might have to go someplace that don't seem like it's the place for you.
Right.
But then when you get there, you find out, this is my spot. This is where I'm the president of the leadership team at my church. Because it was like the churches we went to with my mother and them, where the word of God was the prevalent thing, and not what you look like, not what you had on, not how you spoke, all that. I can go in there, I do rap, I might bust out in a song. We have a order service.
Sure.
But it's God-led. Whatever happens is what God got us going to do.
Ryan, I always appreciate you hopping on Front Page and sharing your thoughts with us, brother.
Oh, man, I got to get there, man. Y'all be having me every week.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us each week, brother. We greatly appreciate you, man.
Oh, yeah, I had to keep 9 minutes.
All right, Ryan, be blessed, brother.
Have a great one.
You too. 833-758-1065 is the number to call if you'd like to jump on Front Page Jacksonville. Look, we are about 9 minutes until the end of the show. And this has been a topic that I've wanted to broach here on the show for quite some time. The state of the church within the African-American community. Pastor J. Marcellas Williams, excellent points that he brought up during the show, which I also agree with. Ryan Sinclair concurs. One of the things that Pastor Williams mentioned that I have to agree with is that not every church is called to remedy every issue or solution, every issue within the community. I will counter with this question, not for Pastor Williams, but for you, for myself, for our other pastors who are listening. What problems are you called to help remedy? Because I want to just kind of lay out a few things that are happening in Jacksonville alone. Every other weekend, I drive to my barber shop to get a haircut. The route to my barber shop requires me to drive through downtown Jacksonville on a Saturday morning. If you have not driven through downtown Jacksonville on a Saturday morning, I'd like to challenge you to do so next week. Because despite the state of Florida passing a no camping bill in October of 2024, making it illegal for displaced homeless residents to sleep outside and to camp outside, despite that bill being passed in October of 2024, when you drive through downtown Jacksonville on a Saturday morning, you will see on each side of Union Street camping areas with tons of homeless people. I don't say this to thumb a nose at them. I state this to reaffirm my question. What social woe has your church been called to remedy in our community? Because for there to be so much homelessness right here in Jacksonville, as a matter of fact, I believe there was a statistic that said the homelessness in Jacksonville has increased by 40% over the past year. 40%. Who's called to the homeless? And this is not a dig at churches, because I understand, probably in more ways than you can imagine, the purpose of tithes and offering and the need for resources in the church to continue fueling your congregation or paying your staff salaries and keeping the lights on in the church building and so forth. However, when we are living in a time, we are on the brink of a recession in this country. I have heard stories and I've experienced firsthand instances where families who are regular attendees at a church or their respective church and do their best to make ends meet week after week, month after month, whatever the case may be, to still pay their tithes and offerings, only to find themselves in a tough spot financially, attempting to go to the church asking for financial assistance and have the pastor tell them, well, I need you to pray and trust and believe in God to get that need met. Well, hold on, player. Why can't you trust and believe God to keep the lights on in this building? Sir, ma'am. Nationally, the African American church recoups well over $1 billion a year in tithes and offerings. And it's a couple of billion. It's been a few years since I've read that the actual financial dollar amount, but it's a couple of $1 billion per year that black churches are receiving from the African American community. However, when it comes to the net worth of the African American family, we're still dead last. Where is the financial literacy? Where is the funneling of these funds into investment vehicles that have compounding interest that can benefit the church and the families? Again, this is not a soapbox to bash. This is a soapbox to ask questions, because questions are the answers to our problems. Despite me not being associated with the church or getting involved with organized religion, I can still see. And these have been issues that have been prevalent for a very long time within the African American community. The church is a part of the African American community. The church is a part of the fiber and DNA of the African American experience. But why are we dead last in these different social areas with all of our church going on Sundays and on weekdays? Why, with all of the preaching that goes on about finances, why does the dollar only live in the African American community for less than 6 hours? Why? It doesn't make sense. So my question is, what are we really doing in the church? How is the church building the African American community to that next stage? Because the spiritual side is only one part of the equation. We are a tripart being. We're a tripart being. Mind, body, and spirit. The church is only riveting the spiritual piece. But why can't it help with the body piece and the mind piece? Because a part of that also falls into the realms of finance. It falls into the realms of politics. And I'm one who does not like politics. But that impacts our day-to-day life. Housing impacts our day-to-day life. Food impacts our day-to-day life. And when I look across the landscape of Jacksonville, when I read the different articles about what's happening in Jacksonville, specifically the things that are impacting the African American community here in the city of Jacksonville, and then I compare that to the number of churches here in the city of Jacksonville, the math ain't mathin'. One last note that I'd like to wrap up on here on Front Page Jacksonville. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's been a whole lot that's taken place this past week in our city. Want to once again send my condolences to the family and friends of Charles Faggart, the food truck owner who unfortunately passed away on Thursday. The JSO, the investigation is still out on how this gentleman became brain dead due to an incident in JSO's custody. We'll wait to see what that investigation is going to show. But on the other side of the food truck discussion, City Council on Tuesday night passed a bill, an anti-business food truck ban that will prevent food trucks from setting up shop at gas stations selling food, saying that it's a potential hazard. Well, if that's the hazard, then stop gas stations from making food inside the building, inside their buildings too. None of us have heard of any instances where food trucks have caused an explosion at a gas station for setting up shop, doing business to feed their families. If this is truly a bill about concern for safety, then stop gas stations from selling food inside the gas station. This is hogwash. And it makes absolutely no sense. Once again, City Council, doing stuff that really doesn't help the people. So who is it really helping? That's the question. You've been tuned in to Front Page Jacksonville. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for another week. If you have not already, I invite you to follow me on social media at The $1 Million Voice. That's DA $1 Million Voice. And of course, you can always watch YouTube for the Front Page Jacksonville version, the video version on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@The $1 Million Voice. Oh, and the website is ready. My website is up and running. Visit themilliondollarvoice.com. That's DA$1millionvoice.com for the YouTube information and a whole lot of other stuff that your boy is involved in as well. You can find it all at themilliondollarvoice.com. Hey, we're going to get you back to your music. I love you. Catch you next time. Peace.
Front Page Jacksonville, Sundays from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. For show episodes, go to hot1065fm.com. We are Hot 1065.